So this morning's talk will be fairly short because we have to go do a wedding service in Flint, Michigan. So about half an hour, or actually about 25 minutes. And I want to talk this morning about why we chant sutras. So you could say quite often I hear people talk to them personally and so on. Yeah, I kind of get the meditation part, and I kind of get the studying part, but I don't really know why we have to say all those things in a foreign language and bow down to something. And of course, the handicap we have there, we've been so indoctrinated from the time we were a young person, with either this general consensus of our society that's not important at all, or maybe we get involved in something like Roman Catholicism or any other religious situation, and then it's hammered into some kind of form that we don't care for, and we rebel, or not, or else we subscribe to it, and we're still, if you're here, you're probably have either rebelled or you were never really indoctrinated in that way. But we're all in some kind of an indoctrination. We're all in some kind of a trance about what? About what we believe, what we think is true. We feel like we should actually, if you stop believing one thing, we should grasp onto something else and believe that. So you should really examine. If you're here, then you're giving me permission to talk to you. You should really examine for yourself what it is to believe or disbelieve anything. The sooner you can stop taking a stand on anything, the sooner you'll begin to see what is really fundamentally important for you. And it's different for everyone. It's the same for everyone in one sense, but in another sense, because each person's karma is so different than the other person, the combination of causes and conditions that arise as any given person. Just as a simple thing is just how we all look. We're all human. We all look like humans. Nobody here looks like a giraffe. No, nobody looks like a giraffe. Nobody looks like a bug, particularly. Bug-like people, of course, which we all suspect are aliens, right? But I'm just saying it's so complicated. Please, 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 I'm begging you, stop jumping to conclusions about everything. Stop it. When I say stop it, give me permission. You're sitting here or you're looking here. There's nothing to believe or disbelieve. That's a very difficult positionless position to be in. It is not actually a position, because you'll find yourself kind of believing and then not believing. But if you don't cling to it, you'll see that everything is changing as it needs to. Everything is totally appropriate. From the point of view of a Buddhist monk, everything is preaching the Dharma all the time. 24/7, as they say, or 24/7/11. I know it's not funny. So the three ways I like to talk about this, talk about this awareness practice, which has come down to us over 2,500 years. 2,500 years, people have been doing something like this. And if you look just in our lineage, the Sokuzan lineage, there's lots of different ways of doing it. It always manifests through the particular person who has some kind of, maybe not realization, but some kind of really, you do anything for 20, 30 years, you're gonna feel like you know something about it, even if you haven't realized. So you're gonna probably teach that. So it's very, very different. So some teachings are more, seem to be closer to what resonates with us more than others. So therefore we find ourselves going in different directions. That's why there's so many teachers, so many teachings in all the different lineages, all the different, not only Buddhism, but any spiritual path, which means a path that transcends the mundane. The mundane path is get a degree, go to work, make money, and pretend there's no such thing as death. So people are doing, because if they really looked and knew that they could die any minute and really knew that, they might change their modus operandi. So the three ways that I like to talk about it, and there's all kinds of different ways. Is one, meditate. Just see what is true. Just hold still, see what arises, see what goes away. That's all you have to do. And how do we do that? Hold very, very still for long periods of time. We call it meditation. You could call it linguini. I knew you would laugh. You could call it anything, and names are interchangeable. We just use the name so we can all kind of agree on what we're talking about or finding. So we'll call it meditation, even though if you look at meditation, if you mention to someone you meditate, they immediately jump to conclude, well, you must be very peaceful. You did, because people that haven't meditated don't have anything to go by other than whatever's behind that word meditation, and then they have assumptions about it. But to actually meditate may not particularly feel peaceful. If you've been avoiding yourself and avoiding your mind and avoiding the things that are going on for a long period of time, and you suddenly or gradually you sit down and start to look and watch what your particular combination of passion, aggression, ignorance, the six sense fields and their objects, the 12 links in the chain of existence, and also the five skandhas or heaps: form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness. If you sit down and begin to look and see what that's doing, it's both fascinating and unnerving, because you begin to see that there's no solid foundation. The more we look for a reference point, the more we're left out to sea. So I sometimes use an image of a river. The one that's coming up to me today is you got this bank of the river, you're going down the river, you got this bank of the river, and you got this bank. This bank is full of trees and all kinds of complicated vines and everything. And this bank over here is just nothing but desert, as far as you can see. So the desert part, that's the formless meditation. Sit down and look. You're not going to see much. We will for a while. And then the other one is study the teachings. What are the five skandhas? What does it mean, passion, aggression, and ignorance? These are three ways of avoiding reality. In other words, who you are, what your actual identity is. Those three ways: pulling on it, shoving it away. So passion, aggression, and what problem? Distracting ourselves. And then the other one, the one that is misunderstood so much, are the forms, chanting the sutras. It's so important because it is, and I use the image of going down at the two banks of the river. This is the one where you actually drop below the surface of the water and you just go along the bottom of the river. There's not much to see. There's no scenery particularly. But that's an area it's just as important as the other two. The study, it's called the two wings of the bird. The meditation practice and the study, the intuition part of meditation and the conceptual part of studying the structures and teachings that have come down to us over the centuries that are pretty extensive. And then the other part is just where both of those are included, but they're included in terms of your practice. They're not included by somebody telling you how they're included. So, and the only way you can understand these sutras, just like the only way you can understand the conceptual situation, the only way you can understand the intuitive or the meditation situation, is by doing it. You have to do it. I mean, you have to walk in this door and you have to actually submit your wily and self-centered ego to this form. There's nothing to believe in this room. If you believe something, that's what you're doing. Nobody's preaching that here at all. But I'm saying that you need to go through these forms. When I say you need to, you don't need to do anything. Do whatever you want to do. But if you're sitting here listening to me and you're giving me some credibility, that I'm saying you need to do all of it. Some people have tried to say, well, Buddhism without beliefs, and Buddhism, which is that's a bachelor's book. That's not so bad. But then they go even further and they say, let's just meditate alone. Why don't we just clear our minds up and not have any forms at all? That works for about the first 8 or 9 months, maybe 2 years. And for some people, maybe indefinitely. But there's something about this form where you're chanting, saying something that doesn't have a doesn't translate it necessarily into some kind of conceptual model. And so this connects us not only with each other, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Buddha is the example of someone who awakened. The Dharma is the truth that he taught. Everything is dependently arisen. There is no solid, separate being anywhere. There are beings, not separate. Seeing that actually frees up your self-centeredness to function in an amazing way. You actually may look self-centered to others, but you're no longer concerned with what other people are thinking. You actually have found out who you are. Question?
I wanted to say, I don't like chanting something if I don't know what I'm saying.
You'll never know what you're saying. Even when it's in English, you don't know what you're saying.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Haven't you chanted the Heart Sutra at night when we do it in English?
Yeah.
Okay, what does it mean? It's in English.
I didn't say I wanted to know what it means. I said I wanted to know what I'm saying.
Okay, then what's your question?
How do I know what I'm saying?
Keep doing it. It takes a lot of repetition. Meditation. We have 6.5 hours of scheduled meditation here every day. That's not just like, because we want to be, don't know what else to do with our time. And we also study, I don't know, what are we studying right now? Several different books from different lineages on Buddhism, on the structure, the concepts, and then we also chant the sutras. We don't chant. If you went to a Heiji in Japan, which is culturally supported Buddhism, then you would be chanting all day. You'd be doing very little sitting practice over there. You'd be doing lots of chanting. The amount of chanting we're doing here is probably around 10%. So what I would say is, if the teachings make sense, you've talked to me a little bit about precepts. That's what you're getting into. That's what you're entering into, is that world of those structures. It's just like somebody studying, using another example. It's like somebody studying in a college. They're studying something they don't say. Well, I don't know what this means. The teaching person will say, well, of course, that's why you're here to study it. So if you look at me as a teacher, then do as I say. I'm not ordering you around. It's mutual. I can also, if you say to me, Bob, because that's what you call me, Bob, I don't think this is for me. I would say, okay, good luck. Good luck. But if you come to me and you say, I want to learn this, then you're going to have to follow the guidelines I lay out. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can call me Sokuzan if you want.
Yes, sir. Sokuzan.
Okay, good. Question?
It's really not a question, but I guess a comment. I've been coming here from time to time, and it's funny how we're talking about this, because I think this is the first time where I walked in with no expectation. And sitting here, my thought was, what are they saying? What does it mean when all this is before we meditate? And that was my only thing that came into my mind when I sat down. And funny how, or ironically, how you're talking about the same thing. That it's, for me, I feel that it's the expectation that I created each and every time that I missed the point.
You have to do it a lot. This is when I say this, I don't particularly teach emphasizing this as much as they do in the Tibetan tradition, which I studied for close to 30 years. And started out in Zen, then moved to Tibetan Buddhism because I had met a teacher there that I could not resist. But I've practiced really, really intense ritualized forms and visualizations and I did not like doing them. I did not understand them. I still don't understand them. I can say a mantra, 100-syllable mantra right now that I've done well over 100,000 times, and know basically what it's saying, but not really have an understanding of what What is that about? This is called awareness practice. Awareness doesn't necessarily discover an object that it's so satisfied with. So it's working. It's like I'm using one bank of the river and the other bank of the river. And the reason I'm saying down under the water is you can't really, it isn't like scenery you can look at. It doesn't make sense on some level, but in order for that all to come together in one understanding, which is realization, seems to be necessary. Not always. There are spontaneous realizers who just suddenly, very few of them, but there are people who, Susan Segal, the famous guy, what's his name? Tola. Eckhart Tolle went down into terrible depression, was getting ready to kill himself, and then the bottom of his identity dropped out. And now he's talks to everybody about it, writes books, makes a lot of money. And even I think he's even teaching meditation now. But meditation he does not what he did. But he doesn't know what else to do with all these people who come to him that want what he apparently has, because he kind of glows. I'm sorry, I don't glow more. But
And the question, which book would you recommend on you talked about the
Five skandhas.
five skandhas?
If you wanted to go deeply into the five skandhas, there's lots of material. The one by my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, is Glimpses of Abhidharma, which is still in print and been reprinted. And that will get you into it in one way. But the best way to get into the five skandhas are to sit and practice meditation and do a lot of it. So you can see that there's form, feeling, perception, concept or naming, or memory is another way of saying it, and consciousness. So the six sense fields and their objects. Until you can begin to see that that structure, that is how we come up with an assumption that there's a solid being here. So if you begin to see that those are separate, that one doesn't have to feed into the other, then the whole self-centeredness and ego, or the concern about what other people think of us, that starts to fall away. You don't have to get rid of that. Because if you try to get rid of it, then you push down and say, well, I don't care what anybody thinks. And we've got the other kind of narcissism, which is the kind that's just the reverse polarity of the same thing. So I would say that book, and sit a lot. Sit a lot.
I'll sit a lot.
Sit a lot. Come here. You have company. You have other people sitting here every day. Further questions? Sheldon?
Is there a way that we can bring the form of meditation into our day-to-day post-meditation life?
In other words, bring the awareness that is happening on the cushion, bring that into your everyday situation. I think, everyone is so different in this area, but the basic teaching, the basic thing that you're doing, speaking to you personally, is more sitting, more holding still and watching what moves. And then whatever you're doing there, maybe some conceptual situation happening, may not. Maybe worrying about the rent, or it could be almost anything. And the way I teach this, having done a lot of it, is just watch what it is. So we're not trying to create a good meditator. This is something people are quite often teach. Meditation is calming down, and there's that aspect. But the very best thing that you can do, from my understanding, is a lot of awareness practice, and then a lot of looking at the way in which you deceive yourself. There has to be some kind of a inspiration to see deeply into who we are and what our self-deception is without correcting it. Because if you correct it, then you cover it up. It's like you will cover it up by wanting to get rid of it. And there's nothing. It's not a bad thing. It's just that the investigation stops there. You follow me a little bit? Okay. Yeah. Goes on.
Here we practice forms because it's part of the service or part of the structure. At home, we might have a sitting practice and study a little bit. Is it important to have form in our daily practice at home alone?
It is. And I work with people. I have people who asked me to function as their personal teacher. And that's one of the things depending on how I see where they're at, if they're highly resistant to it, then I do it slowly. We've talked about this. So I have some people start by just prostrating or just say, you don't have to do the sutras yet. Just say, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Prostrate, go all the way down to the form prostrate. Just do that. Sometimes it's even less. Sometimes it's just light some incense. It doesn't even have to have an image of the Buddha there, but light some incense. In other words, offer something. Offering is just a symbolic giving up. I'm going to give flowers, candles, fragrance to the Buddha. And the Buddha is here. The Buddha's not here, but we need something to remind us. We don't worship this. We could touch a match, stick a match to it. Probably not going to do that because then we'd have to get another one. So, but it's not, from the point of view of Buddhism, everything's holy. Everything is sacred, completely, as far as you can see in any direction. But first you have to what? See in any direction. You have to strengthen the seeing. It's not something you believe in or disbelieve. So everybody's ready for a different amount of form. So some people work with people different ways. Some people I just have them work on the precepts. Just study the precepts. That's a pretty good start right there. The 16 precepts.
As a form.
To start with, if that's where they're coming in at. People come in from different directions. Some people have no interest. I've had questions right away from Stephen. I've never really had a question in the sense of having an interest in it from Sheldon. Never asked me about precepts. Other than in here a little bit, but never asked me. So I never talk about them to him. But what we talk about is you set the tone for it, isn't that correct? Over years. You let me know where you're at. I meet you where you're at. Try to convert you to something else. Like I say, if people come and ask for precepts, I send them packing. I say, go think about it for a while. I don't want someone doing that unless they're absolutely sure they need that kind of glue to glue themselves to this teaching. Because the teaching is empty. The teaching is empty. There isn't anything in the teaching. The very sutra we're chanting in Japanese this morning, the Heart Sutra, is empty of the forms that are being shown. So it's very, that's why it's non-theistic. In other words, it doesn't posit a deity, but it also doesn't say there isn't a deity. This is the confusing part. Some people say, well, Buddhism is atheist or Buddhism is agnostic. We got 2 minutes. 2-minute warning. Yes. Question? Final questions from anyone? Okay, so I would say, this is because we're, Japanese tradition is part of my teaching and Tibetan tradition, so kind of a hybrid situation. The whole country is kind of in a hybrid. What is it? What is meditation? Ancient tradition has just shown up in the last 100 years or so. And, maybe this is helpful for you to do and maybe not, but find a way to clarify your mind, whether it's Buddhism or whatever it is, find a way to do it. That would be my suggestion. That was a quick half hour. Okay, now we're going to go to a wedding.
Thank you.
Thank you.